Miss Abby, whenever you're ready.
She's muted.
Okay. Miss Abby, can you hear me?
Yes. Can you hear me?
Loud and clear.
Okay, great. So good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for joining us. Today we have with us the very, very elusive Mrs.Yinka Kolade. I'm going to go ahead and read her profile. Yinka Kolade is a lawyer, a CEDR Certified Mediator, an Arbitrator, Mediation Advocate, and a Conflict Resolution Practitioner. She holds the LLB, MA, LLM degrees respectively. After a stint in the banking and financial industry, she proceeded to full-time legal practice as a solicitor and then a real estate project consultant. She is a fellow of the Institute of Chartered Arbitrators, FiCArb. In her quest to avoid litigation practice, she got interested in alternative ways to resolve. Can you hear me? There's a feedback. It's not from me though.
Yes, please continue. I've muted everyone. Sorry about that.
Okay, great. So in her quest to avoid litigation practice, she got interested in alternative ways to resolve conflict. She obtained an LLM in dispute resolution and other certifications in ADR. She is very passionate about imparting the knowledge of ADR to others and has been fully involved in training of law students, judges, and various professionals. Years ago, she teamed up with her then partner in legal practice to birth and establish the first multi-door courthouse in Lagos, followed by Abuja, and then several others. She was on the governing council of the Abuja multi-door courthouse and a member of the committee that reviews the ADR laws of the FCT. She is currently in practice as an ADR practitioner, working out of Pembroke Chambers. She was also on the committee for I think it's the British Council, on the advisory committee for the British Council on something related to ADR. I had it in my head, but I forgot that. So we make welcome Mrs. Yinka Kolade. Good afternoon once again, ma'am.
Yeah, okay, let me unmute her. Okay.
Good afternoon. Welcome to everybody, and thank you so much for having me. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Ms. Kolade, for taking time out of your busy schedule to be with us. So we're going to get right into this. And what we try to do here really is to connect with the essence of why mediators do what they do. So it's more or less like a conversation, uncurated, unscripted. So we're going to first of all start off by asking you to give us an insight into your journey into mediation. Is there a story behind it? Why mediation? Because I must add that you went into mediation when a lot of us didn't even know what mediation was. So please, can you just link that to why you did and the vision you saw at that time and where it is right now? Thank you so much.
Thank you. I've always wanted to be a lawyer ever since I was young. So, it was just natural. Even when I was doing my A-levels, I was doing science subjects, and my dad said to me, "What are you doing with science subjects if you say you want to be a lawyer?" So I switched and even had to switch schools, to do art subjects so that I could get into uni to read law. So I've always wanted to read law, but having read law and gone to law school and then, gotten into practice, I didn't like it. I didn't like the way, lawyers were practicing law. I didn't like the whole litigation thing, and I just felt that, there was something missing here. So I tried to speak to one or two people. I remember, one of them was an ex-CJN, and he said, "Oh, why don't you do this arbitration course that, arbitration is quite different from litigation. You probably enjoy it if that is how you feel about litigation. So I said, okay, I would look into it. So I then went to England after I did a master's, in philosophy of law. I then went to England and saw this course called dispute resolution, an LLM in dispute resolution. The university was taking it for the first time. It wasn't very common. I remember there were 9 of us in class, but about 4 or 5 dropped out, and only 4 of us graduated. So I got into the uni and started this course, and it was quite interesting. But what really got me into mediation was part of our course. We had a lady from CEDR, that's the Center for Effective Dispute Resolution, come to talk to us and to teach us in the uni. And she talked so glowingly about mediation. She also told us about what they were experiencing, because I think CEDR had just started not quite long ago then. I'm talking about 1998, thereabouts, and so that really got me interested. And of course, by the time I finished the course, I realized that, yes, this is really what I want to do. And that's how I actually got into mediation. So by the time I came back, I wasn't going to go, into practice. I wasn't going to go into any organization. I was actively looking for, people that were in ADR. And that's when I met with Mr. Aino, and the rest is a long story.
Okay, now that's Mr. Aino's part. Let us now expand that narrative, because the story is flowing into the Lagos multi-door courthouse. Because a lot of people don't know that you're actually one of the people that established the Lagos multi-door courthouse. So can that narrative flow into it? Because you saw something a lot of people did not see then. Because we're talking about what year, man? What year are we looking at here?
When I came back, that would have been 2000.
Wow, that's 20 years ago. Yeah, 20 years ago. So let's talk about the Lagos multi-door courthouse and your professional relationship with Mr. Kehinde Aino, and how you were able to work together towards the establishment of the Lagos multi-door courthouse and the Abuja multi-door courthouse.
Yes, I mean, we teamed up in practice. And but Kehinde had started, had been doing this ADR thing before I joined up with him. So when I came, when I met him, and we had our discussions, and he was like, oh, he's been trying so hard, to get people to see about this ADR. He told me, some of the things that he had done and all that. And I said, yes, I'm also interested. So on that note, we then, started working together. It was very, very tough to sell ADR. And, after a couple of months, I realized what he was saying, because he had been doing it for such a long time, but nobody had listened to him. So, but luckily, we set out the proposal, we kept talking to people. And at the end of the day, with the help of quite a lot of, most of them now are dead, that were on the advisory council, because we were doing it under the aegis of NCMG, the Negotiation and Conflict Management Group. We had to have, a body that we could work under. We couldn't just, present proposals without, we had to be under an organization. So it was NCMG that, was pushing it forward. And I recall Justice Eshaw, I recall Mr. Nosode, I recall Mr. Akombi, and a host of others. Incidentally, a lot of them are dead now. And they kind of encouraged us. Even Justice Akisoya, who was in charge of it from the High Court end, she's also late. But she actually encouraged us. She helped us to, in fact, she was instrumental into us meeting the then governor of Lagos State. Is it Chief now, Tinumbu? She was instrumental in helping us to set up a meeting and all that. And at that time, the current vice president was the Attorney General. So, we had our meetings with them. We tried to sell the idea. Justice Shotuminu, I believe she's still alive. She was the Chief Judge of Lagos State then, and she was very, very receptive to it as well. She set up a committee which was chaired by Justice Akisoya. And, we invited a couple of people on board, and, that was how we started work. And, they gave us a section of the High Court and said, we could stay there, but then it would have to be court connected and all that. And that was how eventually we were able to, get everything sorted. And I think it was launched 2004. That's the Lagos one, was launched 2004. We got the then CJN involved as well, Justice Uwais, Honorable Justice Uwais, and that was how we got it launched. But it was a really, really tough call. We were fighting on all battles. Our colleagues were just they wouldn't hear of it. The lawyers we had several meetings, with MBA. When they had their meetings, we'll go there to give talks. Every sector, it was a real big battle, but we thank God we were able to at least launch it. And I guess the story today is different.
Yes. Now, when we talk about the challenges, can we expand that narrative a bit? Because as a mediator in this field, I know the kind of challenges I face in terms of the dissemination of information and the antagonistic nature of lawyers. So I can imagine if I'm having this in 2021, I can imagine what you could have gone through in 2004. I ask this question because there are we have some young mediators. We have Loretta from FINA mediators, and some of us that are trying to set up our own bespoke mediation practice. So let's have an idea of the challenges you faced then, how you were able to surmount it.
Well, it's a lot better now. I mean, mediation is everywhere. Now everybody wants to get into ADR. Everybody says they're ADR practitioners now, nowadays. But then at that time, it was really tough. First, the lawyers thought that we were trying to rubbish, the profession, that they wouldn't make money from mediation. Then some of them said, oh, this mediation you're talking about, the agreements are not binding, that so if they ask their clients to undertake mediation or to, use the process, the agreements that would come out of it would not be binding, all sorts of things just to discredit it. But luckily we had, and I think that's where we're able to put a foot in the door. We had like the judges I mentioned who were really for it and who saw the good that could come out of it. And then also the current vice president, who was the attorney general then, he too, bought into it as far as Lagos State is concerned, and he was able to, kind of sell it to his boss. And then, of course, not forgetting Honorable Justice Esho, who, even though, a judge and, who had been in practice for so long, he bought into it. He saw, what ADR could become. And so he worked tirelessly with the members of his board to see that, we pushed this through. So essentially, those were the challenges that we faced. A lot of, mostly from our colleagues, actually, and then again, when they now realized that other people other professions could actually practice mediation, that it didn't just have to be lawyers. Oh, that was another kettle of fish. That, oh, it's supposed to be the preserve of the lawyers. What is this that we're saying, and all that. And it continued like that. Even when we got the buy-in of CEDR, to come to Nigeria to train, they would discredit, they would talk about, all sorts. It was terrible. It was really tough. But I guess today it's history.
Today, history is slightly different. Would you say history slightly different or today's history?
Well, at least now a lot of people are embracing it. A lot of people are training in it. Then we were the only ones that were doing the training. we're the only ones doing the training. We'll talk to MBA, we go to the law school at their practice week. We would, organize. I remember Justice Shotomi then organized a session for judges, or we're just trying to disseminate this information and, make people understand and appreciate that, ADR is going to be a plus in the world of conflict resolution. And that mediation, which is we view as a giant of ADR, was, if nothing else, was going to add value to the system that we have. And that was how we were able to push forward. So, even though I know that you're saying that now people still do not appreciate it or are still not accepting it wholeheartedly, you can imagine what it was like in 2002.
Interesting. Okay, so before I hand over to Ms. Abi, I would enjoin everyone who has a comment, a feedback, or question to please drop it in the comment section. And if you need to speak to Mrs. Kolade, kindly indicate by show of hands. But I must enjoin you that we have Mrs. Kolade on the seat, so we cannot be asking all the basic, what is mediation? No.
Why not?
Today is not about what are the futures. Today is about that conversation on a very, very high level. So Ms. Abi and I would will go through the questions, and the ones we feel we can answer, we'll do. But those ones those hard ones that will get everybody thinking, those are the ones that will show. So before I hand over to Ms. Abi, in your own honest opinion, and Abi, please take over after this question. Why do you think lawyers are antagonistic of mediation as a species of dispute resolution, based on how you started off, what you have noticed from 2004 up until now?
I'm tempted to say it's a lack of understanding or appreciation of the process. You find out that a lot of those who have tried mediation, or who have been involved in mediation, probably have an idea, but a lot of those who are, antagonistic towards ADR have never been involved in the process. They've never been in a mediation. They've just heard about it. And I dare say, well, I imagine that we're talking, when we say ADR now, we've zoomed it to just mediation, because
mediation.
Yes, there are other processes, but for mediation, most of them have not been involved in mediation, and those that have been involved in mediation do not like the process because they don't have control of it. In litigation, you can try all sorts. It's your, you have the stage. You can vary things. You can. I mean, what the judge has to decide on is the kind of evidence that you put before him. He cannot go outside of that. It's the submissions you make. So, there's a leeway to be able to, tinker things a bit. But in mediation, where, everything is put on the table and it's, you sort of split everything on the table, there's no way to hide, really. So I think that, does not sit well with a lot of lawyers, because there's no room to maneuver. And sometimes when you go into a mediation, at least, one or two that I have been privileged to experience, you find out that the lawyers, especially the senior lawyers, they don't feel comfortable. They don't feel comfortable, and then they want to bring in all the legalese, or they want to, start talking about evidence and start talking about things that you really have no business to be in mediation, just because they feel stifled and they want to have the leeway to move, to be able to maneuver and to move. But it doesn't happen like that with mediation, if it is properly practiced. So that's my take.
Great. Thank you so much, Ma. So would you say that for lack of a better word, your aversion for litigation or to litigation has been an asset in your practice as a mediator?
Yes. Yes, I would say that, because, you know, it made me to first get myself trained. Secondly, you know, gather as much information as I can, be very interested in the process, and, you know, find out all sorts of things about the process, attend seminars, conferences, you know, just to gather more information. So I think that has helped me. If I was still in between, I probably wouldn't have gone to the lengths that I have gone to, you know, master, if you like, you know, the art of mediation.
I think master is the appropriate word. Okay, ma. So with regards to, you know, what you said about the lawyer's mindset, how would you, now I'm asking for people who are just coming into mediation, and, you know, people who are lawyers who are just adding that cap to their feather. How would you compare when you are working as an arbitrator, which you said is what you did first, to when you're working as a mediator? So how do you switch caps? How do you, you know, the switch between the mindsets?
Well, for the arbitration matters that I have done, luckily I have, well, the ones that I have done solely, you know, that I've been a sole arbitrator, even though I'm mindful of the rules, you know, I always insist that we have some time off where the parties continue to talk. You know, after we've done the preliminary meeting, I always tell the parties, okay, you know, let's fix these dates, let's fix these timelines, but give yourself space, give yourself some time, you know, to keep talking and see whether you can actually, you know, come to an agreement or reach a settlement without us having to go full hog into arbitration. And I dare say, for, you know, a couple that I have done, they have been able to come back, you know, after the preliminary meeting and say, oh, you know, we continue talking, and this and this and this is, you know, what we've been able to arrive at. So it ended up being like a consent arbitration. So I just wrote out the agreements for them, and that was it. So, you know, at every turn, I always want to encourage the parties, you know, to talk to each other. It's very, very important. It's very important. But then, you know, arbitration it's very structured. It has its, you know, laws, it has its rules and all that. And you really have to go by them. Otherwise, the lawyers that come in will, you know, come in with all kinds of objections and so on. That's why, you know, sometimes people say that arbitration is a bit adversarial, you know, compared to mediation.
I agree, sir. I agree to that. I'm just going to take a couple of comments and hear your thoughts on them. So Yetunde Ladega says, oh, she says, Fola, you took the words out of my mouth. Why lawyers appear to be anti-mediation? I think you spoke to that. Would you like to comment on that?
Yeah, I think I have, you know, I've commented on why, you know, lawyers they're sort of not against, but they just don't want to embrace it. I mean, we had a lot of that at the beginning, and it's still there.
Very much so.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, by way of expanding the narrative of that question, and because we have a couple of us that are lawyers here, some of us did litigation before switching over to mediation. I think the elephant in the room, in terms of the antagonistic nature of lawyers, is the fact that they don't understand the concept of making money from mediation. That is the bottom line. At the end of the day, it ties down to the professional fees and the fact that the power of advocacy, so much so of defending a case, has now been handed over to a client. So they don't understand that the strength of mediation from a mediation advocate side is always pre-mediation session, where you teach your client what he has to say. And because you have to admit that the dynamics are radically different between between mediation advocacy and litigation advocacy. So could that be the reason? Maybe not so much so, because we have some lawyers that embrace mediation when they think they have a bad case. But it's really, really tied to the bottom line, their inability to be able to make money from mediation. Could that be a reason why you think that they might be antagonistic of the process?
It's one of the reasons, I said it earlier, that they feel that, they can't make money from this process. You just come to the table and, the parties, tell each other what the matter is, and before you know it, they've sorted it out. So what is the place of the lawyer, in all this? The lawyer is supposed to be the one to, speak for the client and tell the client, do this, do that. That's one aspect of it. But if you have a mediation advocate, okay, before I go on to that, I think also the question of control.
Yes.
We lawyers like to be in control. Yes. We like our parties, our clients to look up to us and think, we have the magic, we can do everything. So when that in mediation, to them, that control is taken away from them, and they don't like it. But, even as a mediation advocate, you have to understand what your role is as a mediation advocate. You are not there as a litigation advocate. You are not there to, control or to, try to take over the process. If anything, as a mediation advocate, you should be helping the mediator. As a mediation advocate, yes, you should be helping the mediator to arrive at the interests of parties. You should be supporting the mediator, because if you do that, then it makes your work easier. Yes, you're there to speak for your client. Yes, you're there to advocate for your client, but you are also there for settlement. And you can only achieve settlement if the mediator is able to facilitate the discussions properly and get to the root of the problem, and is able to bring out the interests and all that, But if you keep antagonizing the mediator, if you don't help the mediator, then, you're not going to take anything away from the process.
That is so true, Ma. That is so true. And I think that you are right, smack on point. The issue, I think, with a lot of lawyers, apart from the money issue, is control, and the fact that their advocacy skills is not going to be put to good use. But for me, I think it's control. They're not in the driver's seat. The power has been taken away from them and has been put in the hands of the clients, of the parties. Yes, thank you so much, Ma. So Nathalia says, spot on, Mrs. Yinka, lawyers oppose mediation because they are not in control. Yes. When they realize they are not in control, they become frustrated, angry, and throw tantrums. But a smart mediator will have to apply high emotional intelligence to be able to handle it. That was actually my next question to you, Ma. What, in your 20 years of experience as a mediator, as an arbitrator, what is the role you think emotional intelligence plays?
My question to you will be, what is emotional intelligence?
Okay, so
is it ability to discern? Is it ability to maneuver? Is it ability to control the emotions of people?
Okay. I think for me, emotional intelligence is when you practice the act of listening and understanding exactly where parties are coming from, and you are aware of everything that's going on around you, and you have the ability to respond accordingly as opposed to reacting. And there's so many things to it. But in a mediation, as a mediator, okay, so your question, Mark, would that be as a mediator or as a party?
Which one exactly? Sorry, I didn't get you.
What emotional intelligence is?
Yes, you said, okay, as a mediator, because what you said is that, mediators should deploy emotional intelligence, if I heard you correctly.
No, that was what Nathalia said. I was going to ask a question about mediation.
Okay.
About emotional intelligence, sorry.
Okay. Okay.
Yes.
Yes. That is
So,
deploying it as a mediator.
okay. So for me, I think it's having the ability to be in control, well, not be in control of yourself and be aware of where the parties are coming from and where they want the conversation to go. Because there are times as a mediator, once you either it's body language, there's so many things that are said or unsaid, and you can tell which way this conversation is going to go. You can
Yes.
say, okay, you know what, I'm going to caucus as opposed to starting, during the plenary, I will caucus first, do the introduction, then caucus, or I will do it a joint session. It depends.
Yes.
So,
Yes. I also think it's the ability to be able to see through what I would call pseudo-substantive issues that are put on the table. When you come to mediation, they give you the summary, you can see the substantive issues and, well, maybe their starting point. And then, the course of discussion, you get to see the interest. But you see, sometimes the interest is covered or is, covered in what I would say pseudo-substantive issues. And these are what? Emotional issues. You have an MD who comes in and says, oh, this person, must pay the money, blah, blah, blah. You must pay. Okay, fine. I know I must pay. But then when we try to, move from there and say, okay, this is how we want to pay and all that, he starts to put boulders on the way. And why is that? And you begin to think, wait a minute, you want your money. This guy has agreed that, yes, he owes you and he will pay. And he's trying to tell you, this is how I want to pay. And you're beginning to put boulders in the way. So there's something else there. And this is what I would say would be part of, the mediator deploying emotional intelligence, knowing that there's something else there that's making this guy to throw boulders, this MD to throw boulders in the way. Because, why would you do that? And sometimes in the course of discussions, further caucusing or, whatever, you find out that the MD is probably upset that, well, yes, the man was at one time my friend. I gave him the money. He wants to try and make me lose my job, and so, I'm upset with him. And all that is wrapped into the substantive issues. So, it makes it a bit difficult to be able to settle, okay? So unless you deal with that aspect of it first, and then you have a clear substantive issue, which you will now look at, it might be a bit difficult.
Okay, so would you say those are rooted in ego is a huge part of that?
Oh, yes. Yes.
Huge. Oh, yes. Oh,
huge
yes.
part of it. I mean, most conflicts, most conflicts develop from ego and I dare say anger. Anger. You'd be surprised what an angry person can do. Not even physically, but just in that space of conflict, in that space of discussion. So ego and anger, yes.
Yes, well, great. Okay, so Fola, there's a question by Amarachi. Please, can you answer that? Okay, and then we go to another comment by Nathalia. The mediator applying emotional intelligence must ensure he or she doesn't descend into the arena.
Yes.
Okay,
yes.
great. Then there's a comment from Mr. Valentino. He says, do you think that an institutionalized scale of fees for lawyers who appear in mediation would in any way break lawyers' resistance to mediation, since the notion of mediation as a charity or pro bono service would be dispensed with?
You see, that's the thing. Lawyers just don't, the resistance is just so tight. Lawyers know that they can earn from mediation. Okay, but when they realize that okay, fine, I can earn fees from mediation, then they go on to the amount. They say, oh, why, mediation, you're only going to pay me 50 naira. Meanwhile, litigation, I can be getting that 50 naira every day, just, in appearance fees for going to court and all that. So it's not even just whether they get fees at all. Even when they understand that, yes, they can get fees, the quantum is also an issue. How they get it is also an issue. The fact that there's really no scale of fees, especially if they're not doing it with an institution. If you're doing it with an institution, definitely the institutions, the ADR institutions have their scale of fees, whether it's mediation, whether it's arbitration, whether it's conciliation, they have their scale of fees. At worst, they will ask you to negotiate. They will negotiate with you and you will arrive at an amount that will be paid. But, supposing, lawyers are just doing it for their clients, whom they would have, recommended litigation to, and then they find themselves saying, okay, let's do mediation. They will tell you, oh, the amount that is being offered is just too small.
So would you say that is a pseudo-substantive issue?
Now you're using my word, yes.
I'm learning from you.
Yes.
Because the truth about it is, they know they can make money, and then they just find another issue. So I think it's a mindset thing, and the control, as you said. So it's an issue. It's a combination of ego and control.
And it's also, a question of, like I said before, career. That anybody can be a mediator. You don't have to be a lawyer to be a mediator. So the fact that, other professions are encroaching on this revered profession of ours, what is that?
How dare they?
How dare they? Anybody can be an ADR practitioner. How dare they? Lawyers can't be engineers unless you go and study to be an engineer. But this one is saying, just get some training and then that's it. Some don't
40
even bother
hours.
with training.
Yeah.
Over to you, Fola.
Yeah. For the astute, and I'm going to lay a premise for my next question. For the astute and discerning mediators, there's like a silent tsunami going on right now. Silent tsunami in the sense that with all that's going on in the litigation in the world, the strikes, congestion, and all of that, the requests of the clients are changing. It is no longer about them knowing they have a good case or how fast that case can be resolved. They are now more concerned about time. Time for them is value, money, and then this also ties into the devaluation of the naira, where even if you have a case right now, for the case to be in court for 2, 3, 4 years without end is becoming a source of concern for them. Now, like every new thing that comes into play, there is a steady growth in mediation right now. People are becoming aware of it. So, based on your experience so far, what are the fears you have for the growth of mediation when, no longer if, when mediation takes its pride of place as the most preferred means of dispute resolution? What fears do you have for mediation that has somewhat affected the arbitration right now that we hope may not affect mediation?
Good. Thank you very much for that question, because I have always been a strong advocate of this, and I, say it at any opportunity that I get. We must practice the process the way it has been designed. There's a reason that mediation was designed the way that it was designed. We've only made it a bit formal, or it was only been made a bit formal, a bit structured, so that the third party can have a controlled conversation rather than people just talking and flying all over. That's the only reason for
I'm sorry, Ms. Kolade, please, in one sentence, can you please explain to us how mediation was originally designed? So maybe that can just link with what you're saying.
Okay, mediation, I believe, was designed as a process where parties in a dispute come together with the guidance of a third party, who is the mediator, okay, to discuss, the parties come together with the guidance of a third party who is the mediator and who facilitates the discussion between them to see whether they can reach an amicable settlement. That is it. As simple as that.
Thank you.
Okay.
Okay, so as you were saying, yeah, please continue.
Yes, so, but you find increasingly that people are deploying the process not the way that it was designed to be. And that's why a lot of the times, people will say, oh, we didn't settle. We didn't settle maybe because your mediator was telling you what to do, which is another type of alternative dispute resolution mechanism, conciliation. But for mediation, you can't tell the parties what to do. And sometimes you find out that that's what happened. And then, they can't settle, or they settle and they're not happy. They can't go away and live with whatever decision was arrived at. Okay. So the mediation process must be done properly. Parties must have autonomy. Parties must be the ones to decide, whatever they want to do with their dispute moving forward. Mediators have to have the patience to let parties explore, to let them explore. It's only when they keep talking that, things will be revealed. A lot of mediators don't have the patience. They don't have the patience. Once, they can't see where parties are going, or parties have not, hurriedly agreed to something, they think, oh, that's, this, we can't settle this, both of you should go away. You must have the patience. You must allow the parties to talk, to explore, to understand each other, to understand why they're where they are, to look at their dispute and say, okay, moving forward, what makes best business sense? Okay, to allow them to be creative in getting an amicable settlement. So my take is, if the process is not done properly in future, we're going to have issues. And that's part of the issues we have in arbitration. Arbitration wasn't meant to be this adversarial. It wasn't. But now it's so adversarial, it's so expensive, a lot of people are moving away from it. The ones that are still employing it is because maybe when they signed the agreement 10 years, 20 years ago, the means of dispute resolution that was inserted was arbitration. So they have no choice, because even if they go to court, court is going to uphold that and say, okay, you have an arbitration clause, go to arbitration. So they have no choice. But you find out that, nowadays, a lot of the agreements that are being signed, you find that it's either a 2-step or a 3-step means of dispute resolution. The dispute clause is just not one option. They probably have 2 or 3 options. And you can be sure if they don't have negotiation to start with, they'll have mediation to start with before they go on to arbitration. And of course, also saying that, this does not preclude your rights to go to court.
Okay, thank you so much. Mr. Valentino, we'll take your questions shortly. Then another question I would ask that ties into this, my fear of the growth of mediation, has to do with the teaching of mediation itself, wherein organizations can just come up and I'm so sorry. Yes, yeah. So yeah, where organizations can just come up and say they're into the teaching of mediation. They gather people together, they teach them mediation, quote and unquote, and automatically they say they have become accredited mediators and mediation advocates. Now you'd have to agree with me. I don't know whether you do that. The strength in being a good mediator is in the doing of mediation itself. And because of the confidentiality ascribed to mediation, it's not something that you can just decide to just sit down and do it. So what role do you think all these organizations can play in assisting in the growth of mediation, knowing fully well that if you don't practice mediation, you are not a good mediator?
If I may ask you, when you say if you don't practice mediation, you're not a good mediator, your practice of mediation, does it determine whether you're a good mediator or not?
Okay, in my own personal opinion, I think yes, and I'll explain. When, of course, you were one of our assessors, you taught us mediation, and whatever skill I've been able to deploy to being a good mediator is tied to constant practice. Of
Yes,
course,
yes.
yes. But now but in a scenario where someone has been trained to be a mediator and it does not have the opportunity to practice the art of
Okay.
mediation, how can
Okay.
he become a good mediation? And now we're talking about human beings here. 1+1 is not 2 in mediation.
Okay.
So it's
Okay.
what exactly, yes.
I see what you mean. Yes,
Mhm.
definitely. I mean, there's no profession that you study that you do not desire to practice. If you do not practice it, how will you put to test what you have learned? Yes, you definitely have to practice it. And I think for those that, one thing, because you mentioned the issue of different organizations giving training in mediation. Well, I think you have to be careful if you are looking, to be trained in mediation or any aspect of ADR. I think you have to do a good research to find out, find out about the organization that you want to subscribe to their training. Don't just subscribe, because you know how it is. Now ADR is all over the place. Anybody can, hang up their shingles and say, yes, we're training in mediation. So I think it lies with whoever desires that training to find out more about the organization that is offering the training, and then determine whether, it's a reputable one, it's one that, is well known, or maybe even not well known, but at least has good trainers, reputable trainers. Okay. So that's it. Sorry, your question about practice. Yes.
Yes, yes.
Yes, about practice. Definitely. You need to practice as a mediator. But you see, unfortunately, these are people's lives. So you cannot practice with people's lives, for want of a better word.
Wow. That's deep.
You need to, I would advise that for those who have just gotten the training, try and see if you can sit with mediators that are already in the business, who will probably take permission from their clients and say, I have a co-mediator, or can introduce you to a co-mediator, as long as you don't say anything. Just sit down there and listen and learn and watch and take in as much as possible. But you can be brought in as maybe a co-mediator, so that the parties will accept you, because don't forget, it's meant to be a very, very confidential process.
Yes.
So some parties can feel uneasy if they see someone else, with the mediator in the room, especially if they haven't been told. But that would be, the best way to learn. Once you do that, then, your confidence is built. You build your confidence, and then you're now able to take on the cases. You're now able to take on the cases. And, that's another aspect of being a mediator. You have to consider and appreciate that this is a live situation. You are helping, these parties to settle their issues. This is this is the lives of people. There's a vast difference between that and court. I mean, for all you can be in court for the next 5-10 years, still talking about preliminaries. But this one, once you come to the table, people start to talk. They start to spill, whatever is within them, and you have to be able to listen attentively. You have to be able to grab what they're saying, and creatively facilitate the discussions between them.
Interesting. Thank you so much. Ms. Abi, we have some interesting questions, feedback, and comments in the chat room. Would you please address that before we continue? You're on mute, please. Okay, and there's a hand that is raised. Do you want to take that before we go?
Yes. Can you hear me?
Yeah, loud and clear. I think.
Okay,
Yeah.
great. So
Yeah,
I think
yeah.
let's take
Mr. Valentino. Yeah, and Mr. Valentino has quite a lot to say. So let's just maybe.
Yes. Yeah. Okay, so Mr. Valentino says, do you subscribe to the point of view that lawyers will be pacified about the intrusion into their professional career if court-connected mediation is reserved for attorney mediators and non-lawyer mediators allowed to join in these reserved areas only as co-mediators?
I don't think that would be very possible. I don't know how easy it will be to reserve, an aspect of law or, mediation for a certain, sector or a certain, set of people. I honestly don't know. I was going to compare, the medical field, with what we're doing, but I guess, it probably doesn't compare. What I was thinking in my head, it's like saying, you trained as a medical doctor, okay, and then you are debarred from carrying out, I don't know, a simple procedure, which was part of your training anyway. Maybe surgeons will come up and say, no, you can't do this procedure, which you had learned about. And, it's not, Mr. Valentino, it's not about us. We shouldn't be pacifying ourselves. I mean, I'm a lawyer. We shouldn't be pacifying ourselves. We as lawyers should understand, we should take time to understand that this is doing us more good than bad. Once we appreciate that, once we understand that and embrace it, we will not need all this, maybe trying to carve a niche for us and, hold on to it and all that. If we understand it and embrace it, it'll help us. It'll help us. It'll help us a great deal. And it's not just, mediation is not just about, settling disputes anymore.
It's avoiding disputes.
Yes, there's the issue of avoiding disputes. I'm involved with an organization now, TDSH, that we launched some time ago, and we're looking at even the transformative aspect of mediation, which means, what happens after you've been through mediation, what happens before you even embrace it, but if you're aware of it, what does it do to you if you're aware of a process that, speaks to a win-win situation? What happens to you as a person? It changes your mindset, So there are different aspects of ADR now that it's not just, employing the process for conflict resolution.
Yeah, I'm sorry, I'm Sabi. If I may quickly interject, can you please explain what transformative mediation is very quickly for those that are just hearing that word for the first time?
I think you have to visit our website.
Just one sentence.
Should I be giving that to you?
Just one sentence. It's gonna please.
In one sentence, okay.
Yes,
transformative mediation is a change of mindset.
That's what lawyers need.
Paradigm shift.
Paradigm shift. Exactly.
Okay.
And then, of course, again, you look at what happens after you have been through the mediation process. Remember, we always say, parties should be able to go away with a decision they can live with. So there's that aspect. What happens to you after you have been through a mediation? You never remain the same. You never remain the same.
Okay.
Okay. I have some questions, but we are time bound, so we will take this outside of Gemma.
Please go on.
Hey, Michelle should go on. Michelle should go on. So let's not argue. Let's go on.
Let me take the comments. Let me. Yeah. I mean, let's
we'll
strike while the iron is hot.
Yes. 6:30 we'll stop.
Okay, great. Thank you so much, Ma. We really appreciate this. Okay, so there's a comment by Andrew Adejire, I think. It says, what are the dangers of a costly, ineffective mediation? There are no danger. Oh, sorry. Please,
a costly, ineffective mediation. Did he say?
Yes, ma'am.
There are no dangers. You see, one thing you need to understand is that even if your mediation doesn't settle, something has happened with the parties. Okay, they've been able to see their illusion, because there's always, I believe there are illusions that come with conflict. They've been able to see that, the illusion, the mindset that they have before they went into the mediation will change. Okay, something will give, so that at the end of the day, you can't really say it's ineffective, because something does happen. The fact that they are not able to reach an amicable settlement does not mean that, there's a danger, or that, the mediation was useless. And funny enough, parties who go away first time like that, you find out that some of them come back. They come back because chances are that, they go and have a rethink, or they continue the discussions after the mediation, and then find out that, okay, we've been able to agree on some certain things, and then they come back to you. So mediation can never, I don't think it can, ever be ineffective, or that it will be a danger. The only danger, and we have stressed it time and time again, is that it's a confidential process. So, it's not expected that whatever you say, the mediation is going to go and, tell somebody else. So perchance you want to deploy another means of dispute resolution, either litigation or arbitration. What you have said in mediation will not be available. Whatever you have disclosed will not be available to be used in any of these other processes.
Thank you for that, Ma. I'm sure that's answered Andrew's question. There's a comment from Mr. Yomi Okuno. It says mediation will be best practiced under prescribed rules. Relaxation will negate the advantage of promptness, party-driven process, and effectiveness. Okay.
I hope that Mr. Okuno is not subscribing to us institutionalizing mediation, because when you do that, then you cage it. I believe that what you need, to practice mediation is just that structured, semi-formal process, okay, where you have a third party who is in charge of the mediation and who facilitates the discussions, so as that would be what would be as far as formality is concerned. But if you begin to say it should be institutionalized, there should be rules guiding it, I hope we will not fall the way of arbitration.
I'm so sorry, Melissa, because I was actually going to ask this. So since it's still within that frame of thought, can I just quickly chip in, Ms. Abi, very quickly?
Yeah, I actually, chip in. I wanted Mr. Okuno to, comment to her. Because go ahead, Sarah.
Yeah, because I also share the same view with Mr. Okuno. Because I'm just thinking out loud, that the relative flexibility of mediation, when mediation takes its pride of place, can now become more like a shield than a sword. That's number one. Because the next question that was even going to flow from what Mr. Okuno said would have been that I also subscribe to the fact that mediation should be made mandatory for now. Then when people now, as a way of circumventing the lawyers who act as a bridge between mediation and the parties. So if there is no structure of some sort in place to say, okay, fine, these are the extant rules guiding mediation, blah, 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 we would still probably be calling and not get to where we should get to. So I don't know whether Mr. whether you can.
I think I probably answered that question from the viewpoint of the process itself. Okay. Now, what you have said, Fola, is a bit different. We have also clamored for what you have just said now, that mediation should be put in the mainstream to the extent that it's somehow mandatory. I mean, how we'll get away with it, I don't know, because mediation is supposed to be voluntary. But I guess if it is brought into, the mainstream of dispute resolution, we might be able to, like they do in England, but again, you find out that they've only been able to do it in some sectors. They haven't gotten to the business aspect yet. They do it in family law, they do it in, divorce, where they say, okay, first go and try mediation. because, you know, they believe these are very sensitive and, you know, people cases. So they tell you, go and try mediation first. If you refuse, you know, there's a penalty, or there's some amount or something that you have to pay, you know, if it does go to court, and then, you know, you don't win. Now, to that extent, yes, but to go any further, I think it would just cage the process. So my first comment was regarding the process, but if it is regarding, you know, how to make use of mediation and how to, you know, sort of make it mandatory, then, you know, that's slightly different. And yes, I think, you know, in some sectors, we can just about get away with it.
Okay, then.
For clarification, can I just put in a word?
Yes, sir. Good afternoon.
Yes.
Good evening.
Good evening, Ms. Kolade.
Yes.
What I have in view is from experience that mediation as it is, you know, with rules and guidelines, should be mandatory, because as a court referred process, oftentimes we have counsel coming in and, you know, objecting to mediation, whereas it's a court order, you know. So, but once you come in and you participate, then the voluntariness is assumed, and then the confidentiality stays. Now, that situation must be encouraged and held firmly. Otherwise, what the judiciary or the litigation has done and arbitration will come into mediation. The rules of court are fine, but the operation of the rules is the clog in the wheel of progress in litigation. Rules are made to expedite action, but the same rules are used by counsel to slow down the process. So what I'm saying or advocating is that strict compliance to mediation rules should be guided. You don't keep mediator waiting. You don't keep mediation waiting, you know, things like that, so that there'll be respectability, because people feel that they are being compelled to come, and therefore they are treating mediation not as seriously as they should. So that's why I was making that suggestion that, look, this thing has to be guided. You come into mediation, you must follow the rules, all right? It's not going to be a free-for-all. If you don't want to disclose at the beginning of mediation, and nobody's going to force you. But once you submit to it, then the voluntariness is assumed that that's taking place. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Okim. I think efforts have been made, at least in, you know, in the multi-door courthouses, to do this, which is a court-connected dispute centers. I think efforts have been made to do this, because I believe if you are sent from the courts to the ADR center and you refuse to go, or you go and you do not participate in the mediation, I think a report is sent back to the ADR judge, who then can decide not to relist your matter. I think, I don't want to be quoted on this, but I think, you know, that operates. The ADR judge can also, I mean, usually I think they invite the parties to a meeting and ask them why they have refused to participate or whatever, and then a decision is taken from there. So, you know, I think efforts are being made to do something, but again, you know, it's a process that hasn't been fully embraced, so we have to tread softly. That's what I think.
Okay, great. Thank you so much, Ma. Sorry, I was muted. There's one more comment by Mr. Valentino, and it goes thus: institutional fees for mediation is reserved as pay for the mediators and not the mediation advocates. What, in your opinion, should be the way to encourage lawyers to refer their matters to mediation and be assured that they will get irreducible minimum institutional fees?
When you're a mediation advocate, okay, you're acting for your client. So I want to believe that you would have discussed fees with your client. So it's not the institution that has engaged you, it's the client that has engaged you. So your fees should be discussed with your client, as opposed to the mediator who is engaged by the institution and for which the institution is bound to pay the mediator. So the institution cannot say they're reserving some amount for the mediation advocate, because the advocate is engaged by the parties. That's my comment on that.
Okay, thank you so much. There's this question I always like to ask Mrs. Kolade, and I make it a point of duty to ask every mediator on the hot seat to hear their perspective. And I like to call it mediation and the concept of justice. Now, some schools of thought believe that mediation is a tool that can be used to circumvent justice, to the effect that when there's a substantive agreement between two people, an erring party can run to the school of mediation to say, look, even though both of us agreed on this, due to circumstances beyond my control, I want a variation of some sort. Now, this has nothing to do with any issue of force majeure or whatever. It's just due to some circumstances that he feels, okay, fine, I can't do this and I need mediation. And we know the bedrock of mediation is give and take. So the question is this: is mediation really justice? I'd like to hear your view on that.
Okay. It depends on what you mean by justice. Okay. I've said it here repeatedly that parties have to be able to go away with a decision they can live with. No, from mediation, no party is supposed to go away feeling, oh, I lost, or go away feeling, oh, you know, I really shouldn't have had that or shouldn't have done that or whatever. Whatever you agree on the table must be something that is okay with you and you can live with it moving away. Now, on the question of lawyers that try to use mediation to circumvent, you know, agreements or whatever, mediation, as a mediator, you must be able to use emotional intelligence. We've mentioned that here. You must be able to decipher where this conversation is going on. You must be able to see through, you know, the party and see that, okay, so this is what this guy wants to do. This is what this guy is trying to do. And then as a mediator, you steer the conversation or you facilitate the discussion such that, you know, he cannot take advantage of it. But at the same time, mediators, more now than ever, especially in business and commercial matters, must be able to go beyond what the parties are saying, must be able to look beyond what the parties are saying. You know, as a mediator, you must be able to decipher what makes business sense and steer the parties to you know, facilitate their discussion so that they see it from that point of view. So as a mediator, you have to be able to do a bit more. You are not a lawyer that just wants to, you know, get something from your client. If you get something from your client or whatever it is that you want to get for your client, if you know that it's not going to be beneficial to the client after he or she leaves or in another 1 or 2 months, you must be able to steer that conversation, their discussions for that other party to see that, look, you might think that what you want to get now is the best, but 1, 2, 3 months down the line, what's going to happen? I don't know whether you get my drift. I really can't think.
Yes, I do.
You know,
yes, I do.
Yes.
Yeah, yes, I do.
I don't want to use the word thinking out of the box because it's not for you as a mediator to, you know, be telling the parties what to do, you know, thinking for them. But you must be able to like I said, in mostly commercial cases, see what will make business sense and steer the conversation to that. Don't just let the parties say they've come to mediation and, it's what they want that they want. Sometimes parties don't even know what they want. But in the course of discussion, in the course of, presentations and things that are said, then they are able to better appreciate, what their dispute is all about, what they should be looking at, okay, what they are missing out, what they should even be asking for, So I think the issue of trying to circumvent or make use of it'll come out, it'll show, and the mediator will know. And so it's the mediator's job to ensure that nobody is taking advantage of the process. That is your job. You chair the meeting.
Interesting. So now we're noticing that, I may be wrong, but ADR is slowly evolving into ODR. Now, no thanks to COVID, COVID has been more or less an accelerant of technology, and that has basically affected everything we do around. So on the basis of this premise, if you look at mediation, when you started off 20 years ago, where we are now, if you could make some projections about the future as far as the business and practice of mediation is concerned, what would you say it is?
What, ODR? Or
mediation generally, ADR, mediation generally, the business and practice of mediation generally.
Yes. Where do I see it in future?
Yes, in future, yes.
Oh, I think, like you said, with the issue of COVID, with the advent of COVID, which opened our eyes to the fact that, we can actually do ODR, I think it's fantastic. The world has become smaller, much smaller, save for maybe one or two inconveniences because of time zones and all that. You can actually, be having mediations all over the place. So that's brilliant. That's fantastic. But again, I come back to the process. I don't think in terms of best use, I still think that person to person is the best. ODR gives us a lot of advantages. It opens a world of opportunities as to what we can do with mediation. But in terms of the process itself, I think that something is taken away from that person to person mediation. Something is taken away. It's taken away, whether you're looking at something is just taken away, so to that extent, maybe it's a minus for ODR, but definitely the world has moved. I don't think that if COVID, we get rid of COVID, that people are ever going to go back to what we used to do before, to the person to person. I think that ODR will be the tool to use moving forward. But that's my own personal thinking.
Okay. Now, I've been privileged to understudy you as a co-mediator in one of in some cases, and I would also want to know some of the personality traits that you have that has enhanced your practice as a mediator. Can we please speak about that? Mrs. On the lighter note, Mrs. Kolade, you are soft spoken, but there's something about the way you handle your cases that that just makes your style unique. I know that sometimes, I know I'm a bit patient. I know I'm patient, but I've seen some instances that I'll look at Mrs. Kolade like that. I would expect her to flip or say something that she just handles it very, 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 I don't know how to put it. So can we talk about some of the personality traits you have that has enhanced your practice as a good mediator?
Well, thank you very much for that. You always, in fact, I'm not sure you're talking about Mrs. Kolade. You're probably talking about somebody else. Yes, personality traits that has helped me. I think to start with, I just don't like adversarial methods. I don't believe it's the best. So that for me is a mindset. You know, no matter how aggressive you are, I just look through the aggression. Okay, so that's why it just never phases me, and I will never flip. Secondly, I'm very calm. I'm a very calm person. You know, my husband always says that even if they're killing somebody beside you, you'll be thinking of what to do and not, you know, what is happening. But you know, that's for me, that's just reality. That's you know, there's, as they say, don't cry over spilt milk. It's happened, it's happened. How do we move forward? That's the way I see things, you know. So, you know, I'm not going to be jumping up and down because somebody has said something. I'm going to be saying, okay, fine, so this has happened. So how do we move forward? So in that respect, I'm very calm. I mean, as you were taught, you know, mediators sometimes have to match the voices of parties. I rarely do that because I'm always calm. Even when they're screaming and they're shouting, I use silence. I just keep quiet. And more often than not, I found out that parties calm down. Okay. And then, you know, try to move forward with my own tone, you know. It helps me because then I know that, you know, I'm in control of my meeting. I'm chairing my meeting very well. You know, the parties are not dictating to me what I should do or how I should behave. You know, I choose to behave this way as a mediator because it is my meeting and I want to chair it. So, but I think, you know, generally I'm a very calm person, but funny enough, I wasn't a patient person. I wasn't. Years ago, I mean, I just was not patient. You could term me as somebody that was not nasty, but I just didn't have the ability to, you know, rub people on the head, so to speak. I just didn't have the patience. But when I came into mediation, I found out that you have to have more than patience. If there's anything that is more than patience, you have to have it if you want to get the process right and if you want your mediations to settle. And I think that has helped me.
Yeah, no, I understand the part about being professional, about the part about being patient, but I also understand the part about not raising your voice. Well, how do you use being quiet to assert authority as a mediator in the mediation session? Because we're talking about the average Nigerian who is egocentric, who wants, you know, there's like a silent battle of superiority in that space. So when they start throwing tantrums, how do you use that part of you to assert authority and control in your sessions? I'm curious.
You must allow parties to vent. I believe you must allow parties to vent. You know, you've just given them a stage they would never have had if they were in litigation. Somebody would have been speaking on their behalf, or they wouldn't even be there. You know, now you've given them a stage. Now you're asking them to unburden. You're asking them to tell you what the matter is, you know. So they want to tell you everything. And of course, in telling you everything, they're going to, you know, put issues to each other that is probably going to bring about some aggression. So to start with, you know, when I'm talking about ground rules, I always advise them that, look, I know what this matter is about. And I know that at some point, tempers are going to be flared. You know, one or two of you might get upset and all that, but please understand that we're here to be able to settle this. And if we don't hear each other, not just hear in talking, hear what each person is saying, then we're not going to get the root of it. Usually when I say that, I can see that, you know, they're nodding their heads and they're like, So if at all, you know, they flare up and I say it once, please calm down. Remember, I told you that we need, you know, to talk to ourselves, you know, in a calm manner. I leave them and I just keep quiet. And I don't think it has never not worked for me. Maybe I've just been lucky. I just keep quiet and I'm looking at both parties.
Okay. Now, so for younger mediators that look up to your good self and in terms of what you do. And for those that want to set up a mediation practice, based on your experience, can you please just highlight some qualities they should have and some pitfalls they should avoid in order to have a successful mediation practice?
Well, to start with, you must be able to sow into your practice. And when I say sow into your practice, there'll be a lot of things that you will do that you will not be paid for. And that's why you can't set out as a lawyer and say, the only thing I'm going to do is mediation. It's not enough for now. Maybe in the future it will be, but you can make mediation, let people know that it's the core of your practice. But for now, you need to do other things. That's reality for me. Reality testing, if you like to use one of our words. Mediation alone is not going to sustain you for now, for where we are now, in terms of the process. So you need to be doing other things. But having said that, make mediation the core of your practice. Sow into it. Go for, attend webinars, go for conferences, read up, find out about, more about what's happening globally. Okay, be constantly finding out information, join groups, and, as well, maybe pick a mentor, somebody that is very active in the mediation field, and run with that person. A few of us picked mentors when we started out in arbitration, and, they would take us along to the arbitration so you could learn, or they would advise you about what you should do. So in terms of, all that I've said, that would be part of your sowing into the profession and into your practice. And then one other thing, for those who want to go international and, and are always saying, oh no, I need to connect to this person in Australia, and, and they're saying, oh, okay, come and do this, or they say they want to come and do this, they want to, do this training, or they want to do that. You need to start asking, what can you do as well in return? What can you do in return? You have the advantage of culture. A lot of these, foreign countries have mixed race, and there are conflicts. And they're now looking at, they're now realizing that, with mediation, there's some certain things you must take into consideration that you must be sensitive about. Culture is one of them. Gender is one of them, So we can come from, a stand of culture. Yes, I'm a Black person. The way that we talk to, our elders is different. The way that we behave in conversation is different. We don't look at each other in the eye, especially if the person is much older. Little things like that speak to culture. So that makes me useful. So invite me also to your own climb, and let me come and, make use of, let me come and use these things that will be useful to you. There has to be reciprocity. It shouldn't be a one-way thing. And because we're so eager, oh, I'm doing mediation in Australia, so blah blah blah. So every time, you have something doing, a friend of yours in Australia comes and does it for you. When are you going to start doing something in Australia as well?
More like a symbiotic relationship of some sort.
Exactly.
Okay then.
Exactly.
Thank you so much. Ms. Abby, over to you. So that we can round up. You're
She's muted. She's muted.
Yeah.
Oh my goodness. Oh,
okay.
Thank you so much. I am overwhelmed. Thank you so much. We have 5 minutes, and Mrs. Osare may just join us.
Mrs. Osare just joined us. Welcome.
Okay, so
thank you very much.
We always acknowledge your presence whenever you come. Thank you so much for tuning in.
Hello, Mrs. Kolade. Hello, Paula. Hello, Abby.
Yeah.
How are you?
Thank you so much.
Very well. Thank you.
Okay, so I'm going to my question was actually about cultural diversity, and in mediation, and you actually touched on that. So what more like cultural diversity and sensitivity in mediation, and you actually touched on that. There's Fola, can you mute? Okay, so how would you say that has, can you hear me?
Yes, please continue.
Okay, great. How would you say that has been imbibed, or well, imbibed in our society here? You're mute. You're muted, ma.
No, Miss Abby, don't let her unmute herself. I can see you're trying to ask her to unmute.
Okay, yes.
Yes. So can you please unmute yourself? Don't press anything. She will.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay. So Abby, your question was how
culturally sensitive or aware are we?
Okay, I think the question is the importance of culture in mediation. How important is culture to mediation?
No, my question is here. How culturally sensitive are we while as mediators in Nigeria? Culture is extremely important in mediation.
Yeah. I think we are culturally sensitive. I mean, okay, let me use the case of the LMDC. Let me use the LMDC as an institution that does, or Citizens Mediation Center. I know for a fact that, you know, they're not going to have a dispute between elderly people and then ask a young 20-something-year-old mediator to be the mediator. That will not be culturally sensitive. You know, I know they wouldn't do that. They will find somebody that is elderly as well, a mediator, an elderly mediator, to do that. Okay. They are not going to have a case between maybe Association of Lagos Butchers and the government, okay, and then give them a Queen's English-speaking mediator who will not be able to speak vernacular, because you might just find out that you need to speak vernacular. Okay, these are all the, you know, some of the cultural sensitivities I would say, you know, is being deployed here. Okay. Whilst trying to be as professional as possible, because that is also very important. You can't say that you want to be culturally sensitive and then not be professional. So you have to be careful. But there's, you know, some very obvious examples like the two that I have mentioned now, which speaks to culture.
Okay, thank you so much, Ma. There's a comment here. Before I take the comments, can I crave your indulgence? Yes. 5 more minutes. These comments have been here for a while. So can I just quickly take them? Thank you so much, Ma. Ubunyong says, is justice really served in mediation where a landlord who, after giving 100% waiver of 2 years, but the tenant insists on giving up possession after a year? Would you like to comment on that, Ma?
Well, I would say that it depends on the circumstances. It depends on the case. And of course, it depends on the mediator. Okay. As we say in mediation, there are some offers that are, what's the word now? Offers that are, there's a particular word, I'm trying to remember. Insultive. There's insult offers. Okay, so you as a mediator, I mean, being aware of that should not encourage such offers. So you keep on talking to the parties and you keep on caucusing with that party that wants, you know, the insult, that is trying to give the insult offer. Otherwise, you will, like the person that asked the question said, you just might fall unknowingly or unconsciously, let me use mediation terms, or consciously into not serving justice. But remember, we said in mediation, we are not looking at who is right or wrong per se. We're looking at how we can move forward with our dispute and come to an agreement that we can live with moving forward. Okay, so the landlord that has given, 2 years rent has given a lot. The other side too must be able to give something. And as a mediator, yes, as a mediator, that's what you should look at. And that is what you should, direct the other party to say, look, this man has given this. It's going to cost him something. What is it going to cost you? You also have to do something that will cost you something.
Okay, thank you so much, Ma.
Yeah.
So there's a comment from Mr. Okuno. It says, I agree with Mrs. Kolade. Mediation advocacy is pre-mediation service. It should be limited to client/mediation advocate. Mr. Fatogun says, these days, judges send back parties to, if they do not submit to mediation, most especially where the report of the mediator notes that the party is not cooperating. So I guess that was to the comments earlier.
But yes. is there also, because I think I heard it once, I don't know whether it was in Ikeja, that they might, the judge might refuse to even relist if the parties don't go back.
Doesn't submit to mediation.
Yes.
That's great.
Wow, if that is true, then that would be awesome.
Yeah.
But if I'm
that the relisting is not automatic. The judge will look at, the report of the mediator.
Okay, then. I'm so sorry. But don't you think, if I'm going to sound like a devil's advocate, don't you think that will take away the very essence of mediation, which is supposed to be voluntariness? When there are subtle mechanisms in play to mandate the parties to go towards mediation. Don't you see that as a drawback of some sort for the fundamental principle of mediation, which is voluntariness?
It's not a drawback. I said earlier that this has to be done very carefully. Even in the climes where they are making mediation mandatory, they only doing it in some sectors. They just started with some sectors, family and all that, which, sectors where you do need to discuss. I mean, these are people, this is not business, it's about people's lives. So they need to discuss. So, they started with that. So it's almost a catch-22 really, because if we don't do that, then you find out some people will want to take advantage of the system. Okay. And again, if that is not done, you can see the resistance. You can see how many years later people are still resisting it, whereas it is good for them. It's like, being offered some medicine that is good for your ailment, and yet you don't want to take it. So it's a catch-22, and it needs to be done, in a very careful manner, maybe starting with some sectors and then graduating after we see how that works for the particular sector.
Wow.
Because the voluntariness of mediation must still stand. You can't force parties to sit down together. They must want to sit down. But oftentimes, by the time they get fed up, they do sit together. It's just that, time, they would have wasted a lot of time.
Yeah, I'm sorry, Ms. Kolade, are you saying we can't force parties? I would have thought it should be that we can force parties to sit down, but we can't force them to settle. More like drawing a horse to the river, but not forcing the horse to drink the water.
Oh, definitely for every mediation, there are chances that the parties will not settle. You can't force them to settle,
But you can force them to sit down. You can force them to be together.
You can force them to sit down, yes. But you see, I am saying that some don't even want to sit down. They will come from the courts and say, well, I only came here because I don't want to be told that I have contempt of court. That's why I'm here. My client really doesn't want this mediation. So
to fulfill our righteousness.
Yes.
Okay.
You hear lawyers saying that a lot.
Oh, yes, wow. Yes. I actually have them coming to office. I work with Lagos State CMC, and they say, oh, okay, so we got a petition or we got a letter inviting and we've come, please do us a letter so that the courts can know we came. And I have to explain to them, that's not the intendment of the court asking you to come here. It's so you can actually sit, and not you, the parties, because they come and say, okay, so I'm here for my clients. I'm like, no, it's party driven, so I have to go through the whole hog. But yes, I agree with you, Ma.
When I was doing the monitoring for British Council, I saw that a lot of that in your organization, quite a lot. And I mean, I was thinking then that will you actually do the letters, or you will insist that they do the mediation?
We insist the parties come in and at least have a bite of the cherry, for lack of a better phrase. Let's sit down. What are the issues? This is where we're at. Where are we going? And then we take it from there. But lawyers are lawyers. The ego thing, the pseudo substantive issues.
but on a lighter note, before you do the final vote of thanks, I think what mediation does to some of us lawyers is that it literally makes the scale fall off our eyes, because now we are talking about lawyers as if we are not lawyers. So we're all taught the act of dispute resolution, but it's amazing that as lawyers, we also see some lawyers as more or less a cog in the wheel of, and it also goes back, I don't know whether the problem is from our call, from how we were taught advocacy in the law school, or I just don't understand where we kind of got it wrong, because I would have expected that it's dispute resolution. That should be the foundation of it all. So why would we all elect to a more, I don't know how to put it. I don't know whether Ms. Kolade understands my thought process on this, and how did we find ourselves where we are?
I think it's the training. Our training lacks something. It's a training that we're given. When this CEDR came into our world, we thought the best place to start teaching it, or to start creating the awareness, was from the law school. But I think that is wrong, because I mean, you've done 3 or 4 years of LLB in the university, where you've been trained to be a lawyer. You then come to law school for just 1 year, and it's not so easy to disorient, to change the orientation, especially if they're still teaching the subjects that they taught us in law school. Now I know that they're teaching ADR, but I think that we will need to really revisit the curriculum. Yeah, really revisit the curriculum, and if all they can present to upcoming lawyers is that, look, you have a choice. You're still a lawyer, but you have a choice. You can be a mediation advocate. You can be you can train to be a mediator. Maybe the mindset, or there'll be a shift, and it will make things easier.
Okay. Thank you so very much, Ms. Kolade. It's been an interesting and insightful session. It's funny how we started off with just 1 hour, and now we're looking at 1 hour, 40 minutes. And I'm like, wow, how did we get Mrs. Kolade to sit down with us for 1 hour, 40 minutes? No, we tried.
Well, I'm not that bad.
Thank you so very much, Mrs. Kolade. We've all learned so much from your wisdom of knowledge, and words can't express how grateful we are. And for those that came in a bit later, you can please catch up on this on FiCArb Mediation Academy on YouTube. It's recorded, and kindly press the subscribe button and tell everyone about it. So on behalf of Team 6 and FiCArb Mediation Academy, thank you so very much, Ms. Kolade. And we hope when we ask to have you here with us again, if you will definitely grant us this kind indulgence.
I will.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Ma. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Ma.
Thank you, Abby. Thank you.
Thank you so much,
everyone. Thank you for listening.
Yes. So I wish everyone a lovely weekend, and we'll be here next week Saturday, and this time we'll be having our own Abby on the hot seat. So, so the hunter is about to become the hunted. So, thank you all for tuning in, and have a lovely weekend.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye. Thank you.